Welcome to The Explainer. So picture this. You're casually scrolling through your feed, right? Just minding your own business. Suddenly, an ad stops you in your tracks. You read the headline, you get a little curious. You literally start imagining how that exact product would fit right into your daily life. And before you even realize what's happening, boom, you're clicking buy. It feels totally spontaneous, doesn't it? But why do you actually click buy? Well, I've got news for you. That journey from a casual, mindless scroll to an actual, literal purchase, it is absolutely not random. It actually follows these deeply researched psychological architectures. Advertisers have been studying, debating, and tweaking these for well over a century. They know the mental filters your brain uses, and today we're going to expose exactly how those hidden frameworks actually operate. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to take a quick look at the classic AIDA model and then move on to Dagmar and measurable goals. After that, we'll be testing the hierarchy to see if it holds up, exploring the predominant ACE sequence, and finally wrapping up with exactly why these models matter. Starting off with Section 1, the classic AIDA model, or basically understanding the century-old purchase funnel. To really grasp where we are today, we kind of have to start at the very beginning. Way back in the late 1800s, this American advertising pioneer, E. St. Elmo Lewis, came up with a framework that essentially birthed modern advertising theory. He laid out 4 linear steps: attention, interest, desire, and action. It goes like this. First, an ad has got to grab your attention. Think of some loud, flashy Super Bowl commercial, right? Then, it has to hold your interest, maybe by showing you how it solves a super specific problem you have. That thinking then transitions into an emotional desire. You realize, oh wait, I actually want this. And finally, action. You reach for your wallet. Now, notice how this creates a funnel. You start with this massive pool of prospects at the top, but as they move step by step through this cognitive and emotional sequence, the numbers drop off until only the actual buyers are left at the very bottom. Moving right along to Section 2, Dagmar and measurable goals, which is all about bringing accountability to the ad spend. So let's fast forward a bit to 1961. Advertising is getting way more expensive, and corporate execs are starting to demand answers. They want to know, what is our money actually doing? Enter Russell H. Colley and his Dagmar approach. Now, what's really interesting here is that this was a huge shift in philosophy. While AIDA is super focused on mapping out the customer's internal, emotional journey, Dagmar, which by the way stands for Defining Advertising Goals for Measured Advertising Results, flips the script completely. It emphasizes setting highly specific, measurable objectives for the campaign itself. It brought this whole new era of strict accountability to marketing. Dagmar relies on a slightly different 4-step setup, known as the ACCA hierarchy: awareness, comprehension, conviction, and action. The absolute crucial distinction here is comprehension. This goes way deeper than AIDA's simple idea of interest. It demands that the consumer actually understands the product's unique features and exactly what it does before they can ever develop the conviction to go out and buy it. To pull this off, Colley laid out some incredibly strict rules for what actually makes a good advertising objective. Honestly, vague goals like let's increase brand awareness were thrown completely out the window. Dagmar requires highly specific, measurable activities. You absolutely need a clearly indicated target audience, a firmly defined baseline and goal like, say, increasing comprehension among 25 to 35-year-old professionals from 10% to 30%, and of course, a set time period to actually achieve it. A classic textbook example of moving consumers down these ACCA steps is Nike's iconic Just Do It campaign. First off, they create this massive global awareness of the brand. Then, they build comprehension of what Nike's really about: athletic excellence, pushing through barriers. That builds conviction, which is basically an undeniable preference for their gear over the competition. And that ultimately drives the final action, which is actually buying the shoes. Which brings us to Section 3, testing the hierarchy. Do these 100-year-old theories actually work? Okay, so here is where our explainer takes a bit of a dramatic turn. For decades, business textbooks treated these linear, step-by-step, think, then feel, then do models as absolute gospel. But here's the catch. Do they actually hold up to modern empirical data? Marketing scholar William Weilbacher threw down the gauntlet back in 2002 with this incredibly provocative quote. He asked, if a widely accepted theory has not been proven over the course of 100 years, isn't it time to say so? I mean, wow. It's a shocking question, right? But the truth is, despite their massive popularity, there was surprisingly little large-scale data proving that consumers actually follow these specific, rigid steps every single time they buy something. To finally settle this debate, researchers conducted a massive, incredibly rigorous empirical study.
We are talking about analyzing brand-level tracking data for 178 fast-moving consumer goods. These are basically your everyday items, the stuff you throw in your grocery cart without thinking too much about. They looked at 18 different product categories over a staggering 7-year period. The goal was simple but ambitious. Figure out exactly how advertising actually changes how consumers think, feel, and ultimately buy.
To really map out the modern consumer's mindset, the researchers tracked 3 intermediate factors. First up is cognition, which is the thinking dimension. That's your brain rationally processing and learning about a brand's specific benefits. Next is affect, the feeling dimension, which represents your emotional desires. And lastly, experience, or the memory dimension. This tracks your memories of prior interactions and past purchases with the brand. Now for Section 4, the predominant AC sequence, or turning the traditional funnel upside down. So what did this huge 7-year study actually uncover? Well, it turns out that for the vast majority of everyday consumer products, that traditional think first, feel second sequence is completely backward. No joke. The data revealed that the predominant sequence for these goods is actually ACE, affect, then cognition, then experience. For everyday purchases, your emotions trigger the sequence way before rational thought even kicks in. You feel something about the brand first, then you rationally process its benefits, and then your experience reinforces it all for the next time. And this brilliantly illustrates how it looks in the real world. Notice the specific flow here. Advertising acts as the external stimulus, sure, but it heavily triggers that affect stage first. That initial emotional connection flows directly into cognition, your rational evaluation of the product, which then naturally leads to a purchase. And that purchase, it feeds right back into your experience and memory of the brand. It is a dynamic, constantly reinforcing loop, not just a straight line dropping off into a bucket.
But wait, it gets better. The researchers didn't just find that feeling comes first. They empirically proved that advertising is uniquely amazing at creating those feelings. By measuring advertising elasticity, we can see that campaigns move the needle the absolute most on affect, scoring a .036. That solidly outperforms both cognition and experience. So, long story short, the data proves that advertising literally works best when it hits you right in the feels.
Let's bring it all home in Section 5, why these models matter, applying the theories to modern marketing. We've journeyed all the way from 19th century funnel theories to 21st century econometrics. But how does this academic data actually apply to the ads hitting your screens and the massive budgets companies are spending? Well, the big takeaway for marketers is that there's no magic one-size-fits-all sequence. The data showed that the A sequence, feeling before thinking, is way more dominant for utilitarian, everyday products that just don't have a lot of differentiation. But on the flip side, if a product is highly differentiated or hedonic, like say a luxury sports car, consumers might actually revert back to that classic model where they think and evaluate features before feeling the desire. It all heavily depends on the product's nature, how it stands out, and its overall market share. This kind of data fundamentally changes how modern marketers build their campaigns. They have to know for sure if their specific product needs a think-first or a feel-first approach to actually get you to buy. So I want to leave you with this to ponder. Think about the very last everyday item you grabbed at the grocery store. Did you meticulously think through its features first, or did some subconscious feeling just guide your hand straight to the shelf? Understanding that little split-second decision is the key to unlocking the hidden psychological architecture behind literally every single ad you see.